Story time about how my father blamed me for getting R-worded. Disclaimer is not my story time on Instagram. I started college 4 months ago. Little context. My parents are extremely strict with me. Never let me date or even have guy friends. I have zero social skills with guys. I can't tell if they like me. I can't tell if they're trying to take advantage of me. I can't even talk to boys. I've never even kissed a boy. Because of all of that, I wanted to live on campus. My parents didn't want me to. I decided that I wanted to. Luckily, my best friend got into the same college, so we decided to dorm together. The very first week, we got invited to a party. This party would turn out to be the worst night of my entire life. We both got ready and looked amazing for the party. We were dressed really well and our hair and makeup was done. When we got to the party, we were offered drinks right away. And boys were swarming us. Oh yeah, and did I mention I had never drank before? 2 drinks later, I was falling down. My best friend was trying to take care of me, but she was also drunk. That's when a guy comes up to me and asks me if I wanted to sleep it off in his room. Guess what happened? Story time about how my father blames me for getting R-worded. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. That's when he forces himself on top of me and penetrates me. I'm feeling super dizzy at this point and I proceed to throw up on him. But it's like it didn't matter. He still kept going. Luckily, it only lasted for about 10 seconds because he you know what. Once he got off of me, I was full of vomit, my clothes were half ripped off, and I was trembling uncontrollably. He looks at me and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you vomited." And he undresses me and puts me in the shower. And the whole time, I couldn't move or say anything. Gave me a change of clothes and took me back to my apartment. After that, he wouldn't stop texting me. It's like he thought that I liked it. 2 days later, he asked me out on a date. When I said no, he got offended. He shows up after my classes to walk me to my next class, and he tries to steal kisses from me. The worst part is when I told my parents, my father blamed me. He said I shouldn't have gone to the party. My parents are very traditional. Now my dad is thinking marriage. He wants to meet him. So I invited my rapist over for dinner. What should I do? Part 4 will be up soon. Story time about how my father blamed me for getting R-worded. Disclaimer is not my story time on Instagram. At this point, my best friend and I are both drunk. I literally felt like I had no control over my limbs. I just kept falling down. Suddenly, a guy comes up to me and asks me if I wanted to sleep it off in his room. Because I have no social skills with guys, I thought he was just being nice. I thanked him and he walked me to his room. He sits me down on his bed and proceeds to tuck me in. I asked him if he could bring my best friend, and that's when he said that she had left the party. That is a total lie. My bestie and I would never abandon each other at a party, especially if we were drunk. When he said that, I decided to get up from the bed and he pushed me back down. He tucked me in again, and that's when I fell asleep. I must have slept for about an hour. When I wake up, he's still there watching me. That's when he said, "You slept for an hour." Then he just throws himself on top of me, starts kissing and grabbing at me and tearing off my clothes. I'm still drunk at this point and feeling super weak and dizzy. It was like the more I said no, the more he wanted it. And then he penetrated me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I found out my husband was hooking up with men off of Craigslist. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. This man is the most prudish person I have ever met in my entire life. He never curses, he does not drink. Basically, he's never done anything naughty in his life. When we met, he was the perfect candidate for me. My parents are very religious and very strict. When they saw the way my husband was, basically super uptight, never wanting to do anything fun, they insisted that I marry him. So basically, this is all my parents' fault. To be honest with you guys, I never really was super attracted to him, but I knew that he would be a good provider. He's pretty high up in the company he works for, and he makes north of $300,000 per year. But I do own 2 of my own businesses, so it's not like I need him to survive. But my parents insisted on me marrying somebody who was already well off. And of course, one of my dreams is to become a mother, so I need a man who's going to be able to provide for me and my kids, especially when I'm pregnant. So we ended up getting married. Was there passion and chemistry? Not so much. But we did have a good time, and he would make me laugh. We essentially became really good friends. Up until I found some stuff on his laptop. Part 2 is part 2 of how I found out my husband was hooking up with men off of Craigslist. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. One day while I was working from home, I needed to get on his laptop to check our cameras. I just gotten a new set of security cameras for our house. I needed to make sure that they were all working. I opened his laptop, typed in the password, and it was wrong. It always had the same password for the past 5 years. I didn't bother texting him, instead I tried to guess. And because I know this man so well, I guessed it in the first try. But as soon as I log in, there's about 5 Craigslist windows open, all with similar titles. Male looking for male. Male interested in male company. This literally shook me to my core. You're telling me that I'm married to a gay man and that he's hooking up with men off of Craigslist? That's when I went ahead and checked his email, only to find that he had been sending pictures and other things to these men. Not only that, but he had met with 2 of them. I instantly printed out all the evidence. Like I said in part 1, I'm not particularly attracted to my husband. I never have been. I really only married him because my parents pressured me into it. Here's what I did. Instead of just asking for a divorce, I wanted to humiliate him. I needed to make him pay. After printing everything out, I sent it to his job. And I sent it to his parents and my parents. Part 3 is up. That's when I sent videos of my own husband hooking up with other men to his job, my parents, and his parents. At this point, I had been married to a man that I wasn't attracted to for 5 years, only to find out that he was hooking up with other men off of Craigslist. Remember I said in part 1 how prudish my husband was? He always made himself seem like he was the perfect man, like he had never done anything bad in his life. life. But let me tell you, some of the things I read in those emails and the pictures and the video, disgusting. No wonder he put off having kids for so long. And no wonder he made me get on the pill, because he never had the intention of having kids. When everyone received their packages, my husband called me super upset. He said that he had only done it for about a week and that it was just him experimenting. And he told me that his job put him on suspension. My parents, of course, stopped speaking to him. My mother-in-law calls me on the phone and tells me that she had always known that he was gay. And apparently they insisted on him not marrying me. But he was set on having the perfect wife, the perfect life. We're obviously getting a divorce now and I'm getting all his money. Or at least I'm gonna try. He's already claiming that I'm obsessed with him, so he wants to get a restraining order. I need to make him suffer even more. How should I do this? Part 4 will be up soon. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking, he's a total asshole, which in that sense, he is. But the rest of the time, he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner, even bought super expensive wine. So we ended up doing it for the first time that night. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing he said to me was, "Do you ever exercise?" I was shocked. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimers are not my story time, I sent me on Instagram. That's when he said point blank, super serious, "Do you ever exercise?" I just stared at him. I had literally just woken up in his bed after the first time we ever did it. Then I thought he must be joking. So I started to laugh a little, and then he says, "No, seriously, do you ever exercise?" I said, "Sometimes." Then he told me, "You should really try to work out at least 5 times a week." I went home and finally texted him saying that I wasn't comfortable with the way he spoke to me. That's when he said that what he said to me was completely normal, and that I shouldn't be offended. This was all in text, by the way. That's when he sends me another text message saying, "You know, you wouldn't have as much cellulite as you do if you didn't eat so much fast food. And if you exercise 5 times a week like I told you." I didn't reply to him for the rest of the day. Later that day, he shows up to my apartment and says, "You know, I should feel comfortable enough to tell you what I think about you." He somehow ended up making me feel bad and I ended up apologizing. Obviously, after that, I became really self-conscious about my cellulite and my entire body. So anytime we were together, I would always stay under the covers. By the way, my boyfriend doesn't have a great body. He's super soft and pudgy. Last week, he told me that he had abs though. Part 3 is a story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. One day he pulls up his shirt and says, "Look, I have abs." Which no, he doesn't. He's super soft and has a thick layer of fat on it. I smirked and he said, "What?" And I said, "You don't have abs." Then he says, "Yes, I do. I'm in better shape than you." By the way, he said this in front of his friends, so I was super embarrassed and stayed quiet the entire day. He finally went to drop me off and I was so happy to be home. But he decided to come upstairs with me. Got straight into my PJs. And when I came out of my bedroom, he says, "Wow, your cellulite's getting worse by the day." That's when I finally broke. I turned around and started yelling at him. I told him he had no right to talk about my body the way that he did, and that all he does is objectify me. He started laughing and said, "Wow, those are big words." And that when we met, he thought that I was in better shape. But my clothes obviously tricked him. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 130 pounds. I am by no means fat, but the way that he was bullying me was making me think that I was. That's when I told him that he was the fat one, and that he had a big, huge beer belly. I also told him that his face was super round, but that didn't bother me. Oh yeah, and that his hairy back was gross. Then he said, "Wow, I can't believe you're attacking my physical appearance." Then he stormed out of my apartment, and as soon as he left, I felt happy. We haven't spoken in 4 days. I'm afraid that if he asks me to get back with him, I will. But I should just break up with him, right? What should I do? Story time about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was really me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. The funny thing is that when my boyfriend and I got together, I did not want the relationship. He begged me for 6 months to be his girlfriend. And you see, the only reason why I didn't want to was because I knew that he was a player. Every single one of my friends had basically gone out with him. I was just the last girl in the group to go out with him because I always kept saying no. And looking back, he was definitely obsessed with me because I never gave in to him. I was the girl that he couldn't have. During those 6 months, he would hit me up on Instagram every single day. Anytime I posted a a story, he would automatically reply to it. He would like and comment on all of my pictures. We also had a lot of mutual friends, so we would end up at the same events and parties. And every time that he would see me in public, he would zero in on me. He would basically ignore all the other girls at the party and make me feel like I was the only one there. And he would constantly compliment me and tell me how beautiful I was, how attracted to me he was, how I was just so different from all the other girls that he had gone out with. Trust me, I knew that he was love bombing me, but eventually after 6 months, I was like, he's gotta be honest. So I decided to give him a chance. And let me tell you, he has been the perfect boyfriend. He's so sweet and considerate. My parents absolutely adore him, and my mom never likes anybody. See, I come from a Latino family. One day I decided to make a second Instagram account. It was just an inspiration account. I posted cute outfits of other people I liked, makeup, nails. Till one day I see my boyfriend in my DMs. Part 2 is of how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram and not knowing it was actually me. Disclaimers on my Storytime with Estertaniaj on Instagram. That's when I opened up my account to see that my boyfriend had DM'd me. First I thought he was joking. When I clicked into the message and I read it, my heart and my stomach sank. He was taking a shot. He thought that I was some sort of influencer. Now when I created the second account, I was already with him. But I really didn't tell him that I was creating it. It was just for fun for myself. I did start gaining followers. I did put in a lot of work into this account, but it was pretty much a visual diary just for me. It just so happens that other girls liked the aesthetic and I started gaining a lot of followers. I had about 10,000. But here's my theory. Since my account is probably listed to be in the area that he is, probably popped up on one of his mutual lists or his explore page or something like that, because I was trying to figure out how he found the account. The message read, "Hey beautiful, I really love your pictures and love your style. I'm also really into fashion. Lol, no he's not. And I would love to take you out on a date. I know all the good spots around the city. Let me know if you're down." So when I clicked on my boyfriend's profile and realized that he had hidden all of the pictures we had together. So if he had DM'd any girl and she went to look at his profile, she would automatically assume that he's single because he doesn't have a picture of another girl. Instead of freaking out and calling him, I decided to keep cool. Instead, I called my mom. She told me to play along with the conversation. So that's what I did. Messaged him back and said, "Wow, I really love your pictures and your style too. What's your favorite designer?" He replied, "Louis Vuitton." Ew. By the end of the conversation, we had a date for that night. And I showed up. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend tried to cheat on me with my fake Instagram account, not knowing it was me. Disclaimer is not my story time, it's on Instagram. At the end of the conversation he thought he was having with some other girl, we had decided to go on a date. And like I said, I was playing along, so I was super nice to him. I complimented all the clothes that he wore. I told him that he looked so attractive in his pictures and that I was really looking forward to meeting him. Chose a restaurant downtown. And of course he did, because I live nowhere near that area. In fact, he and I never go out on dates there. So he knew that he wouldn't see anybody he knew. Here's where it gets actually really funny. This man sent a picture of the outfit he wanted to wear. A brown fedora with a Louis Vuitton monogram on it, a Louis Vuitton belt, black pants, and a black shirt. So I replied saying, "That's perfect. I'll wear a black dress and my favorite Louis Vuitton purse." But I was still heartbroken. Here's what I did. I asked my mom to come with me to the restaurant. Her and I did our makeup, our hair, and we got dressed up really, really nice. And I decided to wear a black dress. My mom actually happened to have an old Louis Vuitton purse in her closet that she never wore, so I grabbed it. My mom and I show up to the restaurant and my boyfriend is already there. So I decided to walk in and turn around, so that way he could only see my back. My mom decided to stay outside of the restaurant, but she knew to come in as soon as he saw me. I suddenly feel a tap on my shoulder, and that's when I turn around. He says, "Oh, hey babe, what are you doing here?" The look on this man's face was of pure fear. That's when I hand him my phone so that he could see that the account that he was messaging was actually mine. That's when he says, "You lied to me?" He was mad at me for pretending to be somebody else. Then he started apologizing, and then he said that he knew the whole time and that he was just joking around. I broke up with him and haven't spoken to him since. Story time about how I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me, and I do not regret it. Disclaimers not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My sister and I have always been rivals since we were kids. I'm 22 and she's 24. We were always super close in age, which means we competed for everything, including our parents' attention, clothes and makeup, and somehow we always ended up liking the same boys. When I turned 16, she was going away for college, and I actually started to appreciate her a lot more. We started calling each other every single day, and I realized that I really miss my sister. We actually got closer living further away than together. My parents were also really happy with this because her and I would not get along when she lived at home. One weekend I decided to go stay with her on her campus, and that's when things got interesting. My sister was living it up. She was partying all the time. I told her that I didn't really like that she was partying so much. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable with her passing out at random guys' places. She told me that I was overreacting and not to tell my parents. But I got home and told my parents everything. This is when our relationship became bad once again. After this, my sister didn't trust me, and basically she became my enemy. She started criticizing everything about me, the clothes that I'd wear, so I had to distance myself from her. My parents wanted her to move back in with us because she wasn't doing well in school. She was clearly partying instead of studying. Of course, my sister refused to move back home, so my parents basically cut her off. I got a new boyfriend at this time, and my sister would flirt with him anytime she came home. I even caught them hugging one time. Part 2 is a story time about how I stole my sister's boyfriend and don't regret it. Disclaimers, not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. When I walked in on my boyfriend and my sister hugging, I knew I had to do something. I went straight to my parents and told them what she was doing. My dad pulled her into her room and talked to her, but she totally denied everything. She said that she was not flirting with my boyfriend, but we all knew that was a lie. Even my boyfriend was honest with me and told me that she had been flirting with him openly. That's when my boyfriend told me he didn't even want to come over to our house because my sister made him that uncomfortable. And when I told my parents this, they felt so embarrassed. They called my boyfriend and personally apologized to him. He was actually so sweet though. He would come visit me to my house and we would just chill out in his car while my sister was inside watching us through the window. Yeah, she was crazy. He and I eventually broke up because he went off to live in another country. And guess what? My sister said that she knew he never loved me and that's why he left me. She was being so mean at the time. A few years later, she started dating someone. Of course, at the time, it never occurred to me to even flirt with him or act the way that she did with my boyfriend. You see, I'm above all that. But as soon as I got a new boyfriend, she would start flirting with him. And she had no shame about it. This became a running problem in my family. My parents would ask her to leave me alone and my boyfriends, and she would say that she did. But no, she didn't. Oh yeah, and her boyfriend broke up with her because he noticed that she would flirt with a lot of guys. Apparently, she did it even in front of him. So when she finally got a new boyfriend, I decided that I was gonna do the same thing to her. I started flirting with her boyfriend a little. Not a lot, but I definitely made sure to tell him I thought he was attractive. After a few weeks, he started saying things back to me, and I knew that it was working. I never did it in front of my sisters and my parents because I didn't want them to get mad at me. So instead, I got her boyfriend to basically fall in love with me. I already knew everything about him because my sister would tell me, so I just started telling him I liked the same things he did. It got to the point where one day he kissed me and I didn't tell my parents. I made sure to get his hopes up. Part 3 is up. I got my sister's boyfriend to fall in love with me, her life turned to misery. No, I didn't regret it. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. One day I went up to my sister and told her that her boyfriend had kissed me. First she thought I was making it up to make her jealous. She told me I could never compete with her and that she was the more beautiful sister out of the two of us. Which is wrong. So I handed her my phone so that she could see all the messages that her boyfriend and I had been sending each other. And that's when she lost it. She started wailing on me. She started slapping and kicking me. My parents ran into her room and asked her what was wrong. I told my parents that I treated my sister the way she treated me. She would always go after my boyfriends, flirt with them, and try to get them to break up with me. Of course, my parents didn't agree with me, so they were really angry. They separated us, but my sister went crazy. She called her boyfriend and told him to come over. Obviously, he didn't know that she already knew at the time. And when he came over, she started beating him up. He grabbed a pan from the kitchen and started swinging at him. She actually ended up giving him a concussion. After that, she begged for his forgiveness, but he still broke up with her. At the end of the day, he ended up leaving her. She was so stupid for begging him to stay with her. Her boyfriend even asked me if we could be together, and I told him no. I told him that the whole time I had just been playing him just to get back at my sister, which I know is so cruel, but he deserved it. After that, my sister and I decided to make peace. She told me that she wouldn't mess with my boyfriends anymore and that she would stop being evil. But after a month of having my new boyfriend, I found her flirting with him too. I told her if she didn't stop that I would make her life miserable once again. I'm pretty sure she has a boyfriend, but she doesn't want to tell my family. Cause she knows that I'll go after him and I would probably end up making him fall in love with me too. But at this point, I just don't know what to do. What should I do? She's so evil and I want to make her life miserable. Bye. Story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. I'll tell you that last month I made $60,000. This clearly is not my story time, and send me on Instagram. So at the beginning I had to lie about my age. I'm really 36 years old, but I say I'm 22. I do look a lot younger than I am, and of course I get filler and Botox. I started my Instagram account 6 years ago. My inspirations were Anna Cherie, Amanda Lee, I am JoJo, and Abigail Ratchford. I mean Abigail Ratchet. I basically copied all of these girls' pictures. Within a month of starting my Instagram account, I had 10,000 followers. And yes, all of them were males. But I didn't really start making money until 2018. You know, like every other girl on Instagram, I signed up for OF. And that's when I started making serious money. But I was also making money from Instagram. Brands would send me clothes and watches and protein powder, stuff like that. Eventually, I became an ambassador for one of the biggest Instagram clothing stores. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Fashion Hova, and I started making a lot of money then. So I basically started living above my means. I got myself a new apartment in Beverly Hills, and it was $6,000 a month. I also got myself a Mercedes, and I would exclusively shop at Air One. I would also go shopping at Rodeo Drive almost every day because I wanted the paparazzi to get pictures of me. And I even called the paparazzi on me a few times, so I had to pay them like $2,000 out of pocket. So yeah, I was spending a lot of money. Whatever money I got that month, I would literally spend it by the end. One month I spent $25,000 going out with friends. I would usually pick up the bill. This is what started getting me into trouble. Part 2 is story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. After I spent the $25,000 in 1 month, I decided I needed another income source. So I thought of escorting. One of my very good friends in LA was also an escort, and she told me about it, but I was like, I can't do that. But one day I called her and she told me everything. She gets contacted through Instagram by very, very rich men, like billionaires. I honestly didn't believe her at first, but then she showed me receipts. Her bank account had more than $1 million in it. it. She told me that she had only been doing it for 6 months. She put me in contact with several people and they had to verify a bunch of my stuff. Then after a week, I was finally in. I was really scared. I had to go get my passport renewed. This meant that I was going to be traveling internationally with men that I didn't know. A few days later, I get a message on Instagram from an account. The guy that owned this account was clearly very rich. It wasn't him contacting me, it was his assistant. He got my information and 2 days later, I was on a private plane. I landed in a foreign country and I spent the entire weekend with this guy. He didn't speak English. Basically took me around his city and showed me off for his friends. I honestly didn't feel uncomfortable at any point and he didn't try anything. In fact, he was actually super shy, but his friends on the other hand were really handsy. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? His best friend is a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time that I'm on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have only been dating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We actually met a couple of months ago on a dating app. We went on several dates over the course of 4 months, and after that he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. While we were dating, I met a couple of his friends, one of them being his girl best friend, and she is bi, which I did know of. Okay, but here's the messed up thing. The day I met this girl, she was staring at me. Not just like staring at me a little bit, hardcore staring. She even told my boyfriend that I was so attractive that he needed to take care of me because she could snatch me up. And she said this in front of me. My boyfriend thought it was hilarious and just laughed at her. And to be honest with you, even though yes, she's a girl, she made me feel extremely uncomfortable. She would always compliment my body in front of everybody. She would comment on how my boobs are so big. We all went to the beach one time and she said, I quote, "If your bikini top pops off, I don't mind, girl." I did not laugh. She even went up behind me and tried to untie my bikini. My boyfriend thought it was so funny. Part 2 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. When she tried to untie my bikini top, I got really upset. I yelled at her, but my boyfriend thought it was funny. When my boyfriend and I got back to his apartment, I told him that his best friend made me really uncomfortable. And he said, "You're being so stupid, she's just a girl." I said that didn't matter because she always made comments about my physical appearance and how she was gonna steal me from him. He promised he would talk to her and tell her to lay off. But this did the exact opposite. The next day I get a DM from her saying, "So I heard I make you feel uncomfortable?" I didn't respond to that and I showed it to my boyfriend. My boyfriend just said, "Don't worry about it, just ignore her." Then she sent another message saying, "I'm sorry if I intimidate you." I was so upset that I replied saying, "You definitely don't intimidate me. You constantly objectify me and that's completely unacceptable." Then she sent me a poop emoji. And that was it. The next time I saw her, I purposely did not even look her way. This was at a party and there were tons of people, but she managed to follow me around the whole night and asked me why I wasn't talking to her. Finally, she grabbed me and kissed me. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. During the party, she just kept following me around. She would ask me over and over why I wasn't talking to her, but of course I just kept ignoring her. I finally went over to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when she grabbed me, turns me around, and just puts her face on mine. She stuck her tongue all the way down my throat. It was disgusting. And she had a really strong hold on me, so I couldn't push her off right away. To tell you that we struggled is an understatement. And I finally got her off of my face after like 30 seconds. I pushed her so hard she fell backwards. And I ran straight to my boyfriend and told him what happened. Thankfully, he was really upset with her and went straight to talk to her. Honestly, part of me thought that he was just gonna take her side. We both went to the kitchen and he asked her what her problem was. That's when she told my boyfriend that she was convinced that I liked her, and that for some reason I was just denying it because I wanted to play hard. By the way, she did have a few drinks, so I guess it could be that. I told her that she was actually hallucinating and that I did not have feelings for her. I also told her not to ever touch me again. My boyfriend told her not to come around anymore, but it doesn't stop there. He actually tried to kiss me again later on. Part 4 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend's best friend kissed me. Should I tell him? And she's a girl. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not even on Instagram. She promised she wouldn't try to kiss me again, but she lied. Just a few days later, my boyfriend had forgiven her. She made up a whole story to him that she was depressed about another girl, and that somehow I reminded her of the other girl. Then my boyfriend said, "Do you mind if she comes over?" And I told him as long as she didn't try to touch me, everything would be fine. This time, I was gonna defend myself. Do you see where this is going? A few of my boyfriend's friends showed up, and then she showed up last. And as soon as she saw me, she came over and tried to hug me. I told her hugging was not necessary for an apology, that her words were fine. She then apologizes. Not 2 hours later, while everyone is in the backyard, I go to the kitchen. And she follows me again. This time she kissed me, but it was much quicker and I didn't have to push her off. Then she said, "What, are you gonna run and tell your boyfriend again?" Instead, I smacked her. Really hard. So hard, you could see my palm print on her face. Then she apologized and begged me not to tell my boyfriend. He's afraid of losing his friendship. And I actually did feel bad for her for a second, but I'm not sure anymore. Should I tell my boyfriend or should I keep this to myself? Bye.